What is going on, everybody? A fantasy football podcast. This is the wrap-up of our regular season and headed into the playoffs. So the playoff edition of this podcast, the teams are all in. The bracket has been set. 8 teams still stand, which means 6 teams. Your season is completely over. Time for you to go fishing, as they say, on TNT in the playoffs. So before we get into who did make the playoffs, let's do one last mention of a few teams and maybe some things that they have in common of the teams that did not make the playoffs. And by the way, before we do that too, I got to say, Ryan, after making fun of him last week, has really cleaned his act up here today. Got a shirt and tie on, went down to the barber, got a little trim. I heard you actually have a bet going with your brothers. Is this correct?
Yes.
Or a bet going with somebody else in the office too about your hair?
Yeah, my hair, I'm not
So we have 2 different bets going on? Is that what this is?
Well, no, the beard is more of a just going out for fun, kind of
Right.
like a see who can grow out the longest.
Okay.
But the hair thing is a bet with Nate and Levi. They don't think I'll dare to grow my hair out all the way until the day before training of the summer. So
That's a long time from now.
I haven't grown my hair out in years because I'm going bald. So
Yeah. Well, that's
Anyway.
in June. So
Yes.
that's a long time from now.
yeah, we'll see what happens.
Nice. Well, you look nice today. And first of all, let's talk a little about who did not make the playoffs. All of our playoff projections and ended up exactly happening what you thought would happen this last week.
Yep. Yeah, I figured that those last 3 teams would sneak in, the ones that had the better position just because of the teams that had to play. And
Right.
unfortunately for all those teams that had that outside chance of getting in, they didn't get in.
Yeah.
And so I feel sorry for them. Now, what's kind of funny about this is that we had 4 ladies decide to join fantasy football. Now, this has always been a little bit of a pet peeve of mine.
Right.
Fantasy football
Yeah.
is a guy's thing.
Okay.
Okay. Now
All right.
I'm not against girls playing.
No,
or
we
anything
love that
like
you
that. I
play.
love the girls play,
I
but
mean, it was 4 wins for me this
but
year. Just kidding.
but fantasy football is, when you think of people talking about fantasy football,
Right.
you think it's a bunch of dorky, football guys or whatever that have nothing better to do with their time than sit around and talk about fantasy football.
Yeah.
So when I saw we had 4 girls playing this year, I was like, interesting. Last year 2 of the girls teamed up. They, Amy and Julia played
championship
together. They
game.
went to championship game. They, maybe the 2, whatever, helped them out. But this year we had 4 girls, and all 4 of them did not make the playoffs.
Fishing. Are
They're all
gone shopping.
fishing. And our league's not even nice. Like some of the nicer leagues let the other teams play anyway. Like they play against each other, and
Nah,
you get
top 8 are in.
so
You
get to
guys are
see.
done. Literally. It's over.
Like you don't have to worry about your lineup anymore.
No.
Jocelyn, you can make as many trades as you want.
Yeah. And also, you can all cheer for me now. So that would be nice because I'm not saying this mean things like he is.
I haven't
so
said
glad
a mean thing yet, other than the fact that obviously they were not the best fantasy football players in the
So
world.
8 guys are in. It was close. I mean, Jenny, it was my prediction to make it in, and Jenny, Alex and Zach did everything they could to help you win that game. They only ended with like 65 points.
Yeah.
And but you only scored 30, so
Yeah.
it didn't quite work out.
Didn't really.
Didn't quite work out. So here's who we got. 8 teams are in. As we said last week, I'm the number 1 seed. Mike's the 2 seed. The way it all shook out, good old Ryan here ended at the 3 seed. And I have to mention too, Ryan Van Hove did something I've never seen done in the 5 years we've been playing fantasy football in the UW League. Every single player on his team scored in double figures this week. So that's pretty impressive. What'd you end with? 140?
142, I think.
142. That was a big week. So he's coming into the playoffs on fire and hot. Now he's had a history of blazing out just as hot in the first or second round of the playoffs. So we'll
Yeah.
see. But I had to give you props for that. It was a pretty amazing week that you had in fantasy football. Then that put the 3 seed in.
3 seed's me.
4
4's,
seed
yeah.
is Zach and Alex. 5 is Farley. 6 is Seth. 7 is Kevin. So he did get back into the playoffs. So all of our past champions are in the playoffs. Myself, Alex, Kevin, and Mike Liebernick.
Mike.
Everybody is there. 8 seed is Ryan Newton, rounding it out, getting me in the first round. So what we're going to do, want to look at a little bit of the matchups, maybe give some predictions for this week.
Sure.
And then we'll kind of just get into it as we go, because there's 8 of us sitting here today, and next week there'll only be 4 of us left. So I think it's kind of funny. I have all the projections here for the week. I'm projected to score the highest amount of points, which is funny because I haven't scored many points all year. I've just done enough to win. But I think you'll notice it's really important at this point to see who your matchups are against. And that's why a lot of times people pick up certain players because they're looking ahead into the playoffs based solely on who they're playing against. I know you've been doing that with your defense for a while. Just looking at matchups and that kind of thing. So, for example, Joe Flacco, my quarterback, is playing Houston, who has the worst secondary in the whole NFL. So he's projected to get a lot of points this week. I have one of my running backs, Noshawn Moreno, is playing Arizona, who has the worst rush defense in the whole NFL. So you get a couple good friendly matchups this week. Hopefully that works out for everybody. So this week I got Ryan Newton, Roomy, little battle with you and me. I'm projected to win 95-70, and I think I will win this week.
I would agree with that. I think Ryan does not have too much of a chance this week.
But we do have to say congrats, Ryan. Your Cowboys, at least they've got a couple wins. They beat the Colts, and they returned Peyton Manning's thrown more interceptions to the Chargers and Colts in the last 2 weeks than he has to his own teammates. So anyway, at least you're probably feeling a little bit better about that. The 2-7 game is Mike and Kevin.
I actually think this might be a semi-interesting game. I still think Mike's going to win.
Yeah.
Mike's team, to me, is just too good to lose at this point to Kevin's team. But Kevin has some guys that could really blow up. I mean, you never know what Peyton Hillis is going to do.
Or even Jamal Charles.
He catches the ball out of the backfield. He rushes. So if he rushes for 2 and catches 1, immediately he's got 40 points from one guy.
Right.
And he's in a good spot. But I still think, I think Peyton Manning will bounce back as well. So he'll have a big game there. But I just don't think he has enough really to beat Mike.
He's got 3 players in my mind. He's got Peyton Manning, and his running backs are good. Jamal Charles could have a huge week. They're playing the Chargers, and the Raiders ran for 250 yards against the Chargers last week. So you never know what Charles is going to do. And, of course, he's got Peyton Hillis. And Peyton Hillis is pretty much could go off at anybody, and he's playing Buffalo this week.
Right.
So Peyton Hillis could have a gigantic week this week. Whereas Mike, pretty consistently, he's been good every week. Now, the only thing is Arian Foster is playing Baltimore, who has a really good run defense. So he doesn't have a great matchup with Arian Foster, who's been one of his main point getters this week. Kind of fun thing. His 2 running backs are playing each other, so that's kind of fun. Ray Rice and Arian Foster.
And I'm rooting for Kevin because if I win, I get to play the winner of this game, and I'd like to dodge Mike if possible. So
yeah, I'm glad I'm on the opposite side
Kevin.
of the bracket from you and Mike, to be honest with you. I like my spot. Now, I think your game against Seth, in my mind, and I love you, Seth, but I think this is the easiest one for me to call. Just looking at your matchups versus who he has right now. Mm-hmm. Nice pickup last week. Seth getting Chris Ivory.
Yeah.
That was huge for 1 week. I pretty much am sure he's never going to do that again. He might be a solid contributor, but if you start him again this week, I wouldn't expect 23 points out of him. But anyway, just because, Robert Meacham, you just never know. He's not like it's consistent. Brandon Marshall hasn't anything, and he's probably going to be, they're playing the Jets, so Revis will be on Brandon Marshall. I don't like that matchup. There's a lot of just the matchups aren't real good. Even Ahmad Bradshaw, Minnesota's run defense is a really good run defense. So I just don't like your matchups very much. I think you have much better ones, and I would definitely take you this week.
No, I like a lot of my matchups. Roethlisberger going against that Cincinnati team that's just, holes all over the place. One thing I like about him is Vernon Davis might have Alex Smith coming back this week, so he should get a lot more targets.
Had a big week last week.
Yeah, so.
Right there. So we'll see. You never know. Got a Liberty versus Liberty matchup there. Now, the 4-5 game, I think, is the best, by far, the best matchup. Alex and Zach are the 4. They're playing Farley, who's the 5. Farley's coming off a good week against me at 111, I think. Zach and Alex have been super consistent, and they've been doing pretty good. They finished the season at 9-4. You know, it's funny. Alex and Zach, they went those 2 games there where they didn't switch their lineups, and both times they had an empty spot. They would have won both those games. They would have finished the season with 2 losses. They would have been right there at that 2 seed, and they would have tied Mike for that spot, depending on how that all shook out. So anyway, they do have a really good team. Easily could have finished the season.
Actually, with that, they would have finished as the 1 seed. Because you finished with the second loss on the tie.
So anyway, they definitely have a good team, even though Dwayne Bowe, who's carried them for about 3 weeks, has scored 0
he didn't
last
catch
week.
pass.
So we'll see. They're playing the Chargers again this week. But anyway, I think this is the best game. And so unfortunately, Alex and Zach, for the 3rd straight week, I'm predicting you to lose. I thought Amy would beat you out to get into the playoffs. She lost to you. Then I thought Jenny would beat you last week to get into the playoffs. You guys beat her. And this week I think Farley's going to beat you. So I love you guys out there in Texas, but just nothing personal. I just think Farley's got a really good team this week, even though he's only projected for 79 points. But with Adrian
stinks for
Peterson,
Farley if you're predicting that. With your track record now, Farley's guaranteed to lose.
Yeah, well, sorry. Well, I've been pretty consistent against Alex and Zach. So that's what we're looking at with the matchups. Anything else that you see coming into this week?
I don't see anything tricky. I don't think there's any doing the sit and start stuff in the playoffs. You know who your solid players are. You're not going to take any risk come playoff time. You're going to play your best players and see what happens.
Yeah, we'll definitely look to see who people are playing, and we'll check those out. So for the other 4 of you that didn't, or the other 6 of you that didn't make the playoffs, congrats on a well-fought season. Cheer us on as we get into this thing. And again, guys that are playing, Thursday night is going again from here on out. In fact, I don't even know who the Thursday game is this week. It's Indianapolis, I think, in Tennessee. So if you got, probably nobody has anybody in there. Tennessee Titans at this point anymore, besides because Chris Johnson's out. So yeah, if you have a Colts player who you play, make sure you got your
I got Reggie Wayne, so I got to get him in there,
which is pretty good. So anyway, we will see 4 games this weekend, and we'll be moving through to the second round, also known as the semifinals of the Fantasy Football League next week. So you guys have a good week, and we'll talk to you soon.
See you later.